My name is Sloane Avery, and if you ask anyone who knows me, they'll say I'm the one who keeps things steady. At work, that means being the graphic designer who meets deadlines even when clients change their minds every 5 minutes. Among my friends, it means being the glue, the one who remembers birthdays, brings snacks to game night, and makes sure everyone gets home safe. It also means people take me for granted. But I didn't realize how much until the night Tara Blake decided to humiliate me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. It started in early spring, when the weather in Chicago was just warm enough that everyone came out of hibernation. My boyfriend, Ethan Miles, had been acting suspiciously cheerful for weeks. He'd smile at his phone, whisper into calls, and when I asked what he was planning, he'd grin like a little kid who'd hidden cookies in his backpack. "Just trust me, Sloane," he said one morning as we sat on the balcony sipping coffee. "You'll love it." Ethan wasn't the type for grand gestures, which made his secrecy even more endearing. We'd been together for 3 years, steady and comfortable, but he wasn't one for dramatic surprises. That was usually Tara's department. Tara Blake had been in my life since college. She was the kind of friend who was fun in small doses, sharp-witted, loud, always ready with a sarcastic one-liner. But she also had a need to dominate every room she walked into. Where I blended, she sparkled; where I listened, she broadcasted. People called her magnetic. I'd learned over the years that magnets could be destructive too. They didn't just attract, they also pulled things apart. One Friday night, we were all crowded into Jordan and Alyssa Reed's condo. Jordan and Alyssa were that married couple who managed to make domestic life look cool instead of boring. They hosted game nights, cooked elaborate dinners, and never seemed to fight. Nina Caldwell was there too, curled up in the corner of the couch with her glass of wine, observing more than participating. Nina was quiet but perceptive. She rarely spoke, but when she did, her words landed with weight. We were playing a trivia game when Tara leaned across the coffee table and smirked. "So, Sloane, what's Ethan cooking up for your anniversary next week?" Because judging by the goofy look on his face lately, it's something big. Everyone turned to Ethan, who flushed bright red. "Tara," he muttered, "you're terrible at keeping your mouth shut." I laughed it off, but inside I was irritated. Tara always had a way of sniffing out other people's secrets and dangling them like bait. "Come on, spill," Jordan said. "What is it? A trip? A proposal?" Ethan shook his head quickly. "Nope, not saying a word." He shot me a look, half apology, half promise, and I squeezed his hand under the table. Later that night, as I helped Alyssa clear dishes, she whispered, "Doesn't it bug you? The way Tara pushes?" I hesitated. "She's just Tara. She likes attention." "Attention's one thing," Alyssa said. "But it's always at someone else's expense." Her words stuck with me. I'd brushed off Tara's digs for years. The time she told my boss at an office party that I was the artsy one who never grew out of doodling. The time she teased me about my thrift store wardrobe in front of a client. The time she forgot to invite me to a brunch where all my other friends went. Little slights I swallowed, chalking them up to her personality. But lately, I'd noticed Ethan watching me with a protective tension whenever Tara opened her mouth. And that was the moment I realized her behavior wasn't harmless anymore. It was corrosive. A week before our anniversary, Ethan and I went for a walk by the lake. He was quieter than usual, fiddling with the sleeve of his jacket. "You sure everything's okay?" I asked. He nodded quickly. "Yeah. I just want this to be perfect." "You deserve that." I smiled and tucked my hand into his. "You don't have to try so hard, you know. Just being with you is enough." He stopped, looked at me seriously. "Sloane, I know you say that. But I want to give you a night you'll never forget." I believed him. What I didn't know yet was that Tara was already plotting to make sure I remembered that night for all the wrong reasons. The night of our anniversary arrived with the kind of nervous energy that makes your hands shake when you're trying to do eyeliner. Ethan had insisted on booking everything himself, reservations, timing, even telling me what to wear. He only gave me 2 clues, rooftop and city lights. I wore a black dress I hadn't taken out of the closet in months, paired with a red lip that felt like courage in a tube. Ethan showed up at my apartment with a bouquet of roses so perfectly arranged they could have been stolen from a wedding. "For the most beautiful girl in Chicago," he said, handing them over. I rolled my eyes, but my chest warmed. "Smooth, Miles. Real smooth." He looked sharp himself, navy suit, hair combed back, a nervous grin tugging at his lips. As he reached for my hand, I noticed his palm was damp. Ethan didn't get nervous often, which made me wonder just how elaborate this night would be. The restaurant was a boutique hotel rooftop, glittering with string lights and filled with soft jazz. Our table overlooked the skyline, the city sparkling against a velvet sky. For a moment, I forgot about everything else, the stress of work, Tara's sharp remarks, even my doubts about whether I deserved someone who went to so much effort for me. Ethan kept reaching across the table to touch my hand, almost like he needed reassurance. The waiter brought champagne, and I caught Ethan glancing toward the side entrance more than once. I assumed he'd invited a few friends to join us later. Halfway through the meal, my phone buzzed. It was a group text from Tara. "Tara, Sloane's about to get the surprise of her life tonight. Party popper, can't wait to see her face." Attached was a picture of the rooftop, our rooftop. My stomach dropped. Within minutes, likes and replies poured in. Jordan sent a string of shocked emojis. Alyssa responded, "Wait, what?" Nina just wrote, "Oh no." I looked up at Ethan, whose face had gone pale as his phone lit up too. "You told Tara?" I whispered. He raked a hand through his hair. "I only asked her to help confirm something with the florist. That's it. I didn't think she'd. Of course she would." We barely had a chance to recover when Tara herself appeared, breezing in like she owned the place. She wore a glittering silver dress that could have been mistaken for a disco ball and carried her phone like it was an accessory. "Surprise," she shouted, loud enough that nearby tables turned to stare. The waiter froze mid-step. Ethan clenched his jaw. Tara leaned on the table, grinning. "Oh my God, Ethan, this is so romantic. Look at these candles. Look at the view. You're gonna propose, aren't you?" I nearly choked on my champagne. Several people at surrounding tables gasped, and one woman actually clapped. Ethan sputtered, red-faced. "Tara, no," but she wasn't done. "Well, whatever it is, it's huge. Everyone, this man has been planning for weeks. Isn't that adorable?" She raised her phone and snapped a picture before I could react. I knew instantly where it would end up, her feed, captioned with something clever, raking in likes while turning my private night into her public stage. The mood was gone. Ethan tried to salvage it, squeezing my hand, whispering apologies, but the magic had evaporated. What was supposed to be intimate now felt staged, cheapened. The surprise was no longer ours, it was Tara's performance. I smiled weakly for Ethan's sake, but inside, humiliation burned. I could feel strangers' eyes on me, pitying or amused. And worse. I saw Ethan's face, crestfallen, guilty, furious with himself for trusting her. Tara sat with us for nearly an hour, chatting breezily, ordering herself a cocktail, making jokes about being the chaperone. By the time she finally left, tossing her hair over her shoulder like she was exiting a movie set. The night had collapsed into ashes. When the check came, Ethan looked at me miserably. "I wanted tonight to be perfect," he said. I forced a smile. "It's not your fault." But in my head, the words were sharper, colder, more certain. This was Tara's fault. And she was going to pay. The Monday after our disastrous anniversary, I dragged myself into the office with a smile that felt glued on. My coworkers had already seen Tara's posts. I could tell from the sidelong glances and the way one of the interns asked if Ethan had gone through with it. I wanted to crawl under my desk. Tara, of course, texted me as if nothing had happened. "Tara, you should thank me, babe." The night needed some energy. It was kind of flat until I showed up winking face. I stared at my phone until the letters blurred. Flat? Ethan had poured weeks into that night, and she reduced it to her stage. I didn't respond. That evening, during a project pitch, I got another reminder of her pattern. My boss asked me to walk the client through a new design draft. As I pulled up the slides, Tara, who wasn't even assigned to the project, leaned in from her seat. "Just a heads up," she said loudly enough for the client to hear, "Sloan likes to get artsy. You might need to reel her in." Laughter rippled around the table. My boss gave me a strained look. I swallowed, forcing my voice steady. Actually, this campaign tested 20% higher than our last one. The client nodded, impressed. But the damage was done. Tara had undercut me before I'd even begun. I caught her smirk as she typed something into her phone. No doubt texting about me in some side chat. That night, Ethan and I sat on the couch, Netflix playing in the background. He kept apologizing for the anniversary, but I hushed him. "It's not you," I said. "It's Tara." He sighed. "I don't get why you keep her around." The words stung because I didn't have an answer. Tara had been in my orbit so long she felt inevitable, like gravity. I'd excused her behavior for years, told myself she was just blunt, or misunderstood, or insecure. But Alyssa's whisper at the game night echoed in my head, "It's always at someone else's expense." I turned to Ethan, my voice low. "I think I'm done making excuses for her." The shift was subtle at first. I started paying attention to the things Tara said, the exaggerations, the digs, the accidental slip-ups. And then I noticed something else. Everyone else was starting to get tired of her too. At Jordan and Alyssa's barbecue, Tara dominated the conversation with a story about how she saved Nina from bombing an interview by rewriting her answers. Nina's tight smile told me it wasn't true. Later, while we were refilling drinks in the kitchen, Nina muttered to me, "I nailed that interview myself." Tara just bragged to the wrong people. I filed it away. At brunch, Tara interrupted Alyssa mid-story to announce that she'd been helping Jordan at the gym. The way Alyssa's jaw tightened was telling. And every time, Tara laughed it off if confronted. "What? I was just joking. Don't be so sensitive." One night, scrolling through my phone, I reread her anniversary text. "You should thank me, babe." My chest tightened, but instead of hurt, I felt clarity. Tara thrived on control. She wanted the spotlight at any cost. She wanted to be the narrator of our lives, turning our moments into her stories. I whispered into the quiet apartment, "Not anymore." The plan came to me slowly, in fragments. A screenshot here, a saved voicemail there. Tara's texts were a goldmine of contradictions, her bragging about pulling strings, her fake apologies. I began organizing them into a folder on my laptop, labeling each one. But screenshots alone weren't enough. No, I wanted something bigger. Something that would let her hoist herself on her own rope. That's when the idea of the thread came to me. Not a direct attack, that would make me look bitter. Instead, a mystery. A puzzle people could sink their teeth into. A story they could spread, share, speculate about. And if there's one thing Tara loved more than control, it was attention. She'd never be able to resist defending herself. I could practically see it already, strangers debating her motives, friends recognizing the patterns, her carefully crafted image collapsing one tweet at a time. The thought made me smile for the first time in days. At the next game night, I sat quietly as Tara told another overblown story about how she saved Ethan once by fixing a presentation he supposedly botched. Ethan shot me a baffled look, he'd never needed her help. I just sipped my drink, letting her talk. My silence wasn't surrender anymore. It was strategy. Because the more she spoke, the more ammo I had. And for the first time, I realized I wasn't just planning revenge. I was writing her downfall. I told myself I wouldn't become the kind of person who weaponized other people's weaknesses. That lasted about 12 hours. The night I decided to push the first domino, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open and a glass of wine gone cold beside it. Ethan was out helping Jordan move a bookshelf, manly errands he swore were romantic in their own way. The apartment hummed with the kind of silence that feels full of possibility. I'd spent the week compiling dirt like a bored archivist, screenshots, old texts where Tara bragged about fixing things for people, a voicemail where she laughed about how she'd made a scene at a birthday to get attention. Some things were petty on their own, together, they painted a pattern. That was the point. Patterns are harder to deny. I drafted the first post like I was writing a headline for a tabloid I hated. It had to be blunt enough to hook people, curious enough to make them click, and vague enough that I didn't look like a spiteful friend. I kept the post anonymous. No names. No direct accusations. Just a thread. Have you ever had a friend who ruins the best moments on purpose? I'm watching someone I trusted turn my anniversary into their concert. Thread, how a helpful friend ruins everything, and how we all let it happen. Hashtag who did this. Then I dropped the screenshots into the thread, one from Tara's story the night before, another from an older message where she bragged about planting herself at events to make things interesting, a third of her telling a mutual friend she doesn't mind stepping on toes. I wrote short captions under each image, framing them as part of a mystery. I hinted. I provoked. I let the evidence speak. I hit post and felt the odd, cold thrill of someone who just set something in motion. The response was immediate. At first it was small, a few likes, a retweet, a DM asking for details. Then, overnight, strangers started chiming in, people who'd seen similar behavior in their own circles. The thread became a mirror for anyone who had ever tolerated a friend who loved performance more than people. I watched the notifications escalate with a kind of detached fascination. People began to tag mutual friends, dropping the thread into our group chats like a lit match. Jordan forwarded it, "This is, wow." Alyssa sent a line of heartbroken faces. Nina replied with 3 dots, and then a voice memo. Her voice was low when I pressed play. "Sloan," she said, "I didn't want to get involved, but that's Tara. She did that to me before my interview. She posted about it like it was a favor." I was furious then, but I told myself I was being dramatic. I felt a rush of vindication. Nina's message opened a door. She agreed to speak up in the thread, not naming names but recounting how Tara had taken credit for her success. Slowly, other friends added their own small confessions, annoyances, lies, favors taken as trophies. The thread snowballed. Tara noticed quickly. Her first move was classic Tara, perform confidence. She posted a story with a selfie captioned, "So many haters tonight? I guess some people can't handle the light dizzy dot." She tagged me once, 2 times, I didn't reply. She then started posting stories of herself having brunch, the kind of curated joy that screams damage control. Her fans rallied. A few people accused the thread of being jealousy or petty ex behavior. But the more she denied, the more the evidence did the work. Her apologies, when they came, sounded like press releases, polished, vague, and entirely about whether people would still invite her to their parties. The thing with people who perform is that they need an audience to feel right. The thread was that audience, and it wasn't playing into her script. People began to replay old comments, dig up screenshots from months ago, and the internet has a long memory. My anonymous account became an aggregator for every small inconsistency Tara had left in her wake. At work, the air shifted. Coworkers I'd barely talked to began dropping messages in the design Slack, saw the thread, had no idea. Clients asked if everything was okay when I missed a meeting because I was scrolling through replies. That was part of the cost. Viral attention is loud and invasive, it splashes onto your life whether you like it or not. But the collateral fell mostly where I wanted it. Tara, used to being untouchable, started to look rattled. Her posts took on a defensive tone. She made a long video, one of those tearful monologues where a person tries to sound humble while the camera angles scream performative. I watched it twice, counting the little cracks, a flinch when someone in the comments named the florist incident, the way her voice sped up when she called people mean. She was trying to frame herself as the victim of a smear campaign. That was the moment I knew the plan was working. What surprised me was how quickly other friends came forward when they felt safe to do so. Jordan texted me a memory about Tara showing up uninvited to his promotion party and declaring the moment her rescue story. Alyssa sent a private message with screenshots where Tara had lied about my clothes in front of a client, then privately messaged the client to smooth things over so Tara could later claim she'd saved the day. It was like pulling threads on a sweater and watching the seam unlace itself. Tara's panic turned petty. She began attacking people in DM threads, trying to rewrite history, calling people ingrates for questioning her kindness. She reached out to Ethan with a barrage of messages, blame, charm, faux concern, which only drove him further away. The texts were an old playbook, authenticity can't be faked long enough for people to forget the pattern. By the time I sat down to plan the next move, the thread had grown a life of its own. Strangers were making timelines. A local blogger DM'd me asking for details. Someone suggested providing more context, an updated post that tied threads together. I hesitated. I didn't want to be petty. I wanted closure. So I added a single update, a screenshot that showed Tara's anniversary post with the rooftop picture and the caption that had ruined our night. I wrote beneath it, blunt and clean, "This is how they make the private public." It spread like a match to dry tinder. The house of cards wobbled. People I'd barely known were piecing together the story I'd been living in. Trolls came, sure, but so did old friends who'd been waiting for someone to say something. The difference between a rumor and a reckoning is always the first person brave enough to speak. I'd lit the fuse. Tara's responses grew more frantic. She started showing up to places she thought she still ruled, book launches, gallery openings, only to find conversations dip into awkward silence as people checked their phones. The cruelty of public shunning is its slow drip. It's not a single, cathartic moment. It's the accumulated pressure of being noticed for what you are and then being ignored. I watched it all not with glee, exactly, but with the crisp satisfaction of someone who'd rearranged the pieces of a puzzle and now saw the whole picture. Everyone kept asking me, anonymously at first, who was behind the thread. I let them wonder. The secrecy added fuel. People love mysteries. They'll fill gaps with the ugliest possibilities for the sake of drama. I wanted Tara to feel what it was to be erased, not violently, but socially, the way a spotlight can be turned cold. She wanted attention. I gave her attention so public and full of truth that it ate her stage away. That was the edge I'd been aiming for: exposure without violence, humiliation without brutality. But I wasn't done. The thread had become a story people wanted to follow. And I was the author. The plan moving forward was delicate: more evidence, no direct naming, let friends and strangers do the work. Let her defend herself until the defenses collapsed. Let the group that had loved her so publicly stop pretending they didn't notice. Let her be the architect of her own fall. Because the worst thing you can do to a person who lives for applause is to make them watch the room go quiet. The night it all broke open wasn't some red carpet gala or dramatic courtroom scene. It was Alyssa's low-key wine and cheese night in her apartment, the kind of gathering where the lights are soft, the playlist is mellow, and people come in socks instead of heels. That's what made it perfect. Tara couldn't resist a room with an audience, even if it was only 10 people sipping Pinot in mismatched glasses. And she didn't know it yet, but the room was already primed. I'd done the quiet work in advance. Alyssa knew. Jordan knew. Nina knew. Even a couple of Ethan's coworkers who'd seen Tara's little rescues were in on it. Everyone had their stories ready. All I had to do was let gravity do its work. Tara showed up 20 minutes late, announcing her arrival like she'd been on stage somewhere: loud laughter, a new silk dress, a bottle of rose she waved like a trophy. "Hope I'm not too late to save the night," she said. That was her first mistake, walking straight into the joke without realizing it. For the first half hour, it was almost normal. Small talk. Brie on crackers. Tara launching into long anecdotes about helping an author friend whose launch had been a disaster until I stepped in. I watched the glances pass across the room, the kind of eye contact people share when they've all been briefed. Then Jordan cleared his throat. "Funny you say that, Tara. I was just telling Alyssa about how you turned my promotion dinner into your inspiration speech. Remember that?" Tara blinked. Laughed too quickly. "Oh, come on, Jord. You know I was just trying to hype you up." "Sure," Jordan said, easy smile. "But it kind of felt like you were hyping yourself up." The silence that followed was sharp. That was the first domino. Alyssa leaned in next. "Yeah. Like when you told my client I couldn't handle a project without your advice. You posted about it later like you saved me." Tara shifted, her smile tightening. "You're misremembering. I was helping." Nina's voice was calm, almost gentle. "You did the same before my interview. I told you I needed space. You posted a whole confidence pep talk like it was about you." One by one, the stories rolled out. No yelling, no theatrics, just people naming what they'd swallowed for too long. Each story was a pinprick, and Tara's veneer started to bleed. She tried to laugh, to deflect, but the rhythm of the room was against her. Finally, Alyssa pulled out her phone. She queued it up, just like we planned, the screenshot of Tara's anniversary post, the rooftop photo that had sparked this entire fire. She set her phone on the table like it was evidence in court. "This," Alyssa said simply. The room went quiet. Tara stared at the screen, her own words reflecting back at her, impossible to deny. "I didn't speak. I didn't have to. The silence did it for me." Tara's voice cracked. "You all are twisting things. I've only ever tried to make life better for people. You think I'm the villain?" No one answered. That was worse than any argument. She looked around, searching for one ally, one nod, one smile. None came. The silence stretched until it broke her posture. She slumped back, eyes wet, the room watching. And then, almost mercifully, Ethan spoke. "Tara, maybe you should just go." That was the end. No storming out, no dramatic curses. Just Tara gathering her purse with trembling hands and walking to the door. The sound of it closing was softer than I imagined, but it was final. No applause. No cheers. Just release. The empire Tara had built, of charm, manipulation, performance, collapsed not with an explosion but with the weight of her own history finally spoken aloud. And me? I sat there, glass in hand, heart steady. I hadn't said a word all night, but every word had been mine. Tara disappeared for 3 days. For someone who lived online like a second bloodstream, her silence was deafening. No selfies, no brunch stories, no captions about haters. Just gone. But the internet never leaves a vacuum empty. People speculated. Threads multiplied. Old posts of hers resurfaced, screenshots of her rescues, her dramatic interjections at other people's milestones. Strangers were connecting dots she'd left scattered across years. A narrative had been written, and she no longer controlled it. By the 4th day, she tried to come back, a video, 15 minutes long, sitting cross-legged on her bed. Her tone swung between wounded and defiant. "I only ever wanted to help people," she said. "If I made mistakes, it's because I cared too much. To the people twisting my intentions, you're cruel." The comments shredded her. Not because people hated her, but because the script was old. She'd used the same lines too many times, and now the audience recognized the performance. They'd stopped suspending disbelief. In the group chat, no one posted her video. That was the real verdict. When your closest circle stops paying attention, the crowd follows. For me, the weeks after felt strange, like walking out of a long tunnel and blinking into daylight. At work, things were lighter. Clients stopped circling around Tara's presence. My team joked again, sent memes in Slack. I noticed how easy it felt to breathe without her constant shadow. With Ethan, it was complicated. He admitted he'd once admired Tara's energy, she made things exciting, he said, but now he saw it for what it was. "You were right," he told me one night, voice low as if confessing. "I just didn't want to see it." His loyalty, once stretched thin, had snapped back. Slowly, we rebuilt trust. The others found their own ways of healing. Nina landed a job she'd been too nervous to apply for, free from Tara's draining influence. Alyssa started hosting more gatherings, smaller and warmer, where no one fought for a spotlight. Jordan, in his dry way, called it the peace dividend. As for Tara, she didn't vanish completely. People like her never do. She rebranded, months later, on a smaller scale. New city, new acquaintances, new captions about resilience. She still craved the stage, but the empire she'd built here was gone. Every time she tried to creep back into the old circle, silence greeted her. Silence is colder than anger. Sometimes, late at night, I'd scroll back through the thread that had started it all. Thousands of likes, hundreds of comments. My anonymous account still sat there, untouched, as if waiting for me to decide whether to delete it or keep it as proof. I never did either. I let it exist in limbo, a ghost of the choice I'd made. Did I feel guilty? Sometimes. Revenge has a way of staining your hands, even if you don't regret the outcome. But guilt isn't always weakness. Sometimes it's just the echo of your own conscience reminding you you're still human. Mostly, though, I felt free. I hadn't destroyed Tara. She'd done that herself. All I'd done was hold up a mirror and make her look. And when I thought about that rooftop, the ruined anniversary, the way she'd turned my love into her performance, I realized something simple. She thought she was untouchable because everyone let her be. Until someone, me, didn't. And that was enough to bring her empire down. Years later, I still think about that night, the thread, the collapse of Tara's little empire. I live in the same city, same apartment, same skyline, but the weight of her influence is gone. It's strange how quickly people forget the noise of someone who thrives on attention once they've been removed from the stage. Ethan and I are still together. Not perfect, but steady, with laughter that doesn't have to compete with anyone else's. We talk openly now about our fears, our frustrations, our victories. The anniversary disaster became a private joke, a quiet bond between us rather than a public humiliation. Tara? She tries occasionally to reinsert herself into the lives of mutual friends. Every attempt ends in silence. People remember, or maybe they just remember what it feels like to be betrayed repeatedly. The whispers are faint now, but the lesson is clear: no one forgets the ripple caused by a well-placed mirror. I don't boast about the thread or the exposure. The story exists online, sure, but it's not mine to flaunt. The satisfaction was never in shaming her for the sake of pride, it was in the balance restored, the quiet justice that unfolded without me needing to shout. Sometimes I scroll through social media, pause at the echo of her failed comeback posts, and smile. It's not malicious. It's recognition that some people write their own endings before you even pick up a pen. I've learned that revenge isn't just about punishment. It's about clarity, about setting boundaries, about making sure the people who thrive on undermining you can no longer step on the stage of your life. It's about being visible in your own story, loud enough to prevent someone else from hijacking the narrative. And as I look at the skyline from my balcony, glass of wine in hand, I know this: justice served doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes, it's a quiet twist that leaves everyone else stunned. Because in the end, the empire falls not from brute force, but from truth held steady in the right hands. So, what would you do if a friend humiliated you like that? Think fast, because sometimes justice doesn't wait. If you love this story, smash that like button, share it with anyone who loves a savage twist, and subscribe to Savage Revenge for more real-life payback you won't believe.